First of all, many compliments from my side for the project you have just showed. They are really amazing. I really liked the combination between real and digital contents, and thank you. My presentation will be about the representation and communication of cultural landscapes. And as Alfonsina introduced, I am an expert of preservation of cultural heritage. And here at CNR, my research is mainly about virtual museums and storytelling, interaction design. And so combination between real and digital contents inside the museum. One of my favorite topic is the landscape. I'm working on this topic from some years here at CNR, and also as an independent author of documentaries for the Italian television. So these two kind of experiences helped me a lot to learn about storytelling and about the communication of landscape, of cultural landscape, of course, in very different ways, from a scientific side and from a communicative side. So I really think that storytelling is very important, and I would like that also in our bilateral project we could work on storytelling of cultural landscape, connecting territories with users, with collections inside museums. So I would like to start with the landscape definition. According to the European Landscape Convention in 2000, the landscape. So this definition is from the European Landscape Convention. The landscape is a certain part of the territory as perceived by the people, whose characteristics derive from action of natural and or human factors and their interrelations. So, as you can see, in this definition, the landscape is not considered as a purely objective phenomenon, like the territory, for instance, nor as a purely subjective entity, so the landscape as an expression or state of the mind, but it's something in between these two domains. Because the landscape, of course, changes our behavior, actions, feeling, vision, and human communities model and changes the territory. So there is a really strong interrelation between these two domains. And in fact, when we deal with cultural landscape, we have to consider it from an ecological perspective, where geological processes, geomorphological elements must be combined with the anthropic and cultural perspective. So when we deal with landscape, we should consider perception, how we perceive the landscape, and possibly how the ancient population could perceive the landscape. We have to analyze, of course, landscape in order to make interpretations. Also, in the perspective of human experiences and in the perspective of evolution. The map is not the territory, of course, because the map is an abstraction. We extract some information from the territory and we create something useful for us. The map is an abstraction always, if it comes from measurement, because we select what we want to measure, what is interesting for us. But the map is an abstraction even when we want to visualize the symbolic meanings, cultural values that we attribute to the territory. So the map is something from one side objective, even if abstract, but on the other side it's something personal, because every person gives specific emotional and symbolic values to the territory. So according to me, when we transmit cultural values about the landscape, we should work on both levels. According to me, they are equally important. So how can we create a landscape virtual museum? In the light of what we have just said, the representation of the cultural landscape should be multi-layered. So it means that we start from the observed landscape, the landscape as it is today, as it appears to us, and then the interpreted landscape, so mapscape, the reconstructed landscape, possibly starting from the actual knowledge of the ancient landscape, starting from all the evidences and interpretative studies, we can try to propose possible reconstructions of the past landscape, up to the mindscape, that is the imaginary landscape. So the landscape representation is a multidimensional and multisensory space of perception, narration, and simulation. And this kind of approach has guided many projects of ours in the past years. So here I tried to summarize some criteria for a virtual museum of landscape. The first criteria is the connection among territories, stories, objects, and users. And I think that for Vani, this will be very important. Multi-scales representation, starting from holistic vision in order to represent topographical relations, processes, and also local representation in order to represent some specific examples of way of living and of local communities. A diachronical approach that means to compare and to create a relation between past landscape, present landscape, and possibly future landscape in the case of future projects. This means the integration of bottom-up and top-down approaches in order to create a multi-layered visualization, as I said before, and multiple perspective of storytelling. So I think that we need to include scientific studies, data coming from the archaeological research, historical research, of course, but I think that it is also important to interact with the actual population, with the community, the human communities living in the territory, to investigate their perspective, their point of view, because they are part of the landscape, of course. So multisensory embodiment and also the emotional factor is really important. This means also media hybridization, to work with the movies, documentaries, but also with the virtual reality systems representing multi-layered landscape and giving the possibility to interact with the information, dramatization and so on, mixed reality solution and so on. So storytelling and the reliability are really very important, as I said, and the possibility to create different experiences accompanying the visitors and the users in the different moments of his visit, before, during, and after. And then another very important criteria is to involve citizens in this process. So creating tools for the co-creation and for the creation of content inside the community. And finally, to adopt solution to share the scientific contents and all the digital dataset that have been produced in order to make them survive also in a future perspective and not dying with the project. So I go very fast to some examples. Here we have some museum objects that have been digitized in 3D, and then they have been composed with images of local of the inhabitants of an historical village, and they have been reprojected on the external space of the museum. So like an offer to the present community going outside the museum. I go directly to another example. I would like to show you a short video. It's recorded from a web app 3D. It's Iarcheo, or Daniele already introduced this very recent project. And here our purpose was to valorize 8 archaeological parks in Italy, using mostly virtual reconstruction and storytelling. I will show you a short video. This is the website of the project, where you can find many other information if you want. And I am showing you this example because I think that it could also give some inspiration for our bilateral project. Okay, here we have a map of Italy with the 8 archaeological contexts. You can select one browsing in the list on the right, also or otherwise from the map. Here you have some options regarding accessibility, the selection of the language, and so on. And now we just see a few tools and possible ways of exploring the sites. Here we are in Nora, in Sardinia. We have the virtual reconstruction of the ancient landscape in the Roman period. And it is a panoramic image, so you can explore at 360 degrees. This means that it is compatible with all devices, mobile and desktop systems. You can open some contents regarding this landscape. You can read the text or you can listen to the audio, and you can switch to the same point of view looking at present landscape. So we have a perfect overlapping between the past reconstruction and the archaeological landscape as it appears today. So we move to the temple of Esculapio, and here you can see some yellow hotspot that allow the user to open some more deep content, so additional storytelling that can help you to go deeper in the contents. So we have different levels of narration. Also in this case, you can listen to the audio, or you can read the written text. You can browse among different views. And here we are, for instance, in Sirmione Desenzano, north of Italy. This is a Roman villa. Also in this case, we have the reconstruction of the ancient landscape. And you can switch to the same point of view in the actual archaeological landscape. We move in Desenzano del Garda, it's on the same lake. Here you can jump from one point of view to another one. So you can change the point of view, exploring the different rooms of this villa. And you can visualize all the mosaics that have been virtually restored. Always exploring at 360 degrees. And here you can see an example of interpreted landscape. That means that we have mapped on the rendering the different levels of reliability of the reconstruction. Each color means a different level of reliability. So elements that have been reconstructed starting from the evidences, some other elements that are the consequence of a virtual restoration, other ones they are the consequence of anastylosis or simply of comparative studies and similarities. And finally, in the case of Alba Fucens, there is an example of an additional content. When you interact with the reconstructed view, you can select an element and explore a 3D model. So there is also the possibility to link the panoramic view with the 3D models that can be explored in real time. So it's a connection between objects and their ancient context. Okay, that's all. I am finished. I hope it was quite clear. And thank you.